Good morning, good morning, good morning. Please have a seat. Thanks for everybody coming in today. We actually have a huge crowd. The last couple of weeks have been pretty light. So as a little introduction, my name's Brandon. I'm on the leadership team. I've been here since the beginning with Ray, his wife Rachel, back since 2020. I'm married to my beautiful wife, and we've got a picture of our family. We've got two sons, Elijah and Lucas. Let's see, are they up there? Yeah, right on. And, the great thing about having a photographer as like your best friend is not only does he take great pictures, but he adds a little extra hair to your hairline. So they already took it down, but this is the first opportunity I've had to speak in front of everybody. And so I hope you guys mind or don't mind if I'm a little bit honest. I really struggled with whether or not I was going to speak today. I wasn't sure whether or not I was really worthy. And so if I come across as a little nervous today, I'm not. I'm extremely nervous. So just bear with me as we kind of go about our message today. And so I hope it resonates with you. And when you leave here today, you feel more connected and you have an opportunity really to hear what I have to say, connect with God, reach out, and then go on about your day as you move into the rest of the week. So we're in week 4 of our series, Kingdom Living. I'm probably going to read a little bit off my notes here as we go through. Last week, Pastor Ray talked a lot about planting seeds and then discipling your disciples and having conversations about God. Really, us doing the work of planting the seed and then allowing God to reap the harvest, to grow the plant, so to speak, to grow someone else's faith. It's not necessarily our job to do the saving. That's God's job. But let's take the opportunity as we interact with the people that we're blessed to be in front of to have that opportunity to maybe just every once in a while plant that little seed and then let God do the rest, right? And so a little over 10 years ago, a friend of mine planted that seed of faith in my heart, and he invited me to church one Sunday, and so I went. I always believed in God, but I kind of had an aversion to church, to be honest. I thought it was full of a bunch of weirdos. Come to find out, it's not. It's actually a bunch of really great people that love God, and I'm very blessed to be connected to all of you. So when I started going to church, some people know this story about me, some people don't. But at the time, I was in the middle of my alcohol addiction. I'd been dealing with it for several years at that time. But I started going to church every Sunday. And then God went to work to help me tackle my addiction and grow my faith. So this week, we're in Mark chapter 5, and Jesus already used the parable of planting seeds, growing the harvest, and then what he does is he shifts his teaching towards faith. And so I'm skipping a little ahead a bit in the book of Mark, and we get to the story of Jairus, and I think we're going to have the verses up here. So in verse 22, then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived, and when he arrived, he saw Jesus, and he fell at his feet. And he said to Jesus, pleading fervently with him, "My daughter is dying. Please come and lay your hands on her. Heal her so she can live." I took acting classes as a kid. I hope that was really good. Jesus goes with him, and a huge crowd follows. And when we're talking about crowds, we're talking about like thousands of people in a lot of cases. And this is one of the reasons why the Bible is so cool. And so perfectly crafted, because if you're not really paying attention, you might kind of like skip past what's going on and what Mark is actually saying as he's shifting the story from Jairus to this woman. But on the journey to perform one miracle, what ends up happening is Jesus performs another one. And he uses this opportunity to encourage his message of faith. And that's going to bring me to my main point, which is Mark 35. So don't be afraid, just have faith. This is the crux of everything that I have to say. There it is. And so we go on. So in verse 25, a woman in the crowd that had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, she had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them, but she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd, and she worked her way through the crowd, thousands of people, and she reached out and she touched his robe. And because she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I'll be healed. I'm going to pause right here because there's a lot going on. Jesus is on his way to help Jairus, who has his daughter who's dying, right? And as he's headed to Jairus' house, huge crowds follow. And then all of a sudden, this woman, seemingly out of nowhere, comes into the story. So why is this story in the middle of Jairus' story? And the reason is because Jesus, God in human form, knows everything because he's omniscient, right? He's all-knowing. He knows exactly what he's doing, so he's going to use this opportunity to make an example for Jairus. The woman who has suffered for a very long time heard about Jesus. And from what she's heard, she believes down to her core that if she can just touch Jesus' robe, she's going to be healed. She has no idea what's actually going to happen, but the one thing that she does know is that she's unclean. So without getting too much into like the clean and unclean and kind of what's going on here of an unclean person touching a rabbi who is clean, we'll kind of suspend that for now. But what she does believe is that she's going to be healed. And Jesus knows that he can use this miracle to help Jairus with his faith, right? But I'm going to actually take this one step further because I'm going to suggest that what Jesus is doing here is he's making an implication. What he's doing is he's saying to Jairus that it's not just enough to have faith. We have to reach out to God, okay? We have to take action. And just like this woman who had that feeling and that belief that all she needed to do was reach out to God, reach out to Jesus, touch him, and then she would be healed. Always love when the phones are on. But honestly, so it's really quite an amazing thing. And ultimately what we have to do is we have to have faith, but we have to be willing to act on that faith. It's not just good enough to sit back and say, God, I'm dealing with this, that, or the other. I believe in you. Fix me. We got to lean in and we have to reach out, okay? Which leads me to my second point, which is reach out to God. In verse 29, it goes on. Immediately the bleeding stopped and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of a terrible condition. And Jesus realized at once that the healing power had gone out of him. And so he says, who touched my robe? I mean, he's looking around. He's like, Peter, did you see who touched my robe? James? Who was that? Once again, I took acting classes. And so the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, comes to the realization of what is going on. She falls to her knees, and in front of him, she tells him what she had done. And so Jesus turns to her and he says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Your faith. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. So circling back around to my story, I began my journey of faith when I was in the deepest part of my addiction. A friend of mine planted that seed in my heart that perhaps one day God would deliver me, I might get a little emotional, from that addiction. And I believed that God would do exactly that. It didn't happen overnight. It took time. But I remember God saying to me, not audibly, but just feeling his presence and feeling what he had to say to me, that he was going to deliver me from my addiction. Just keep reaching out, keep going to church, and he would heal me. Just have faith. And so as God goes to work on the one miracle in my life, he provides another one to support me and encourage me to get through that journey. And that's what's happening here in Mark chapter 5. God is using this story of this woman to let Jairus know that all he really needs to do for his daughter to be healed is to just have faith. And so for me, that second miracle is when God introduced me to my wife, Valerie, who's sitting here today. It is a miracle that her and I even met. Does anybody have any idea what the odds are that two different people from two completely different backgrounds, me having lived 33 years, her having lived 24 years, with all of the decisions, the places, the journeys that we had been on, would be at the same restaurant on the same night, to me, is a miracle. And I believe it's God's miracle. Does anybody have any idea what the odds are? Like the simple mathematical odds of something like that happening? It's incalculable. Predictive AI couldn't calculate what the odds are of that occurrence, occurring. And so anyways, Valerie's that person in my life and has always been the one to encourage me to just have faith. And so when I'm in the middle of dealing with what I've got to deal with, then at times all hope seems lost. I have her by my side to encourage me to have faith, but also to act. She was there to help me get the help that I needed, and I did. And so I ask you, anybody that's in this room, who's that person for you? Who is that miracle in your life? It doesn't have to be your spouse. It could be the person that's sitting next to you. But there's somebody that's in your life that is there to help you get through whatever it is that you're dealing with and deliver you. And guess what? God's with her, or God's with you as well. And so, in the case of Mark chapter 5 with Jairus and his dying daughter, God uses one story to bookend another. One miracle to support another. And so going back to Jairus in verse 35, while he was still speaking to her, the woman, okay, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. And they told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now. But Jesus overheard them. And so he says to Jairus, don't be afraid. Just have faith. And Jesus has got to be thinking to himself, did you guys not just see what happened? Like, I literally just healed that woman, and she'd been bleeding her entire adult life. You were standing right there. Did you not hear what I just said to her? Because he's very careful to point out that it wasn't just him that healed her, not in like the traditional sense. He didn't just reach out and say to that woman, your bleeding is going to end. Let me stop that. What he's saying is she reached out to him, the healing power went out of her, out of him, and he healed her. And he's saying to Jairus, all you need to do is just be like this woman and have faith. You've already reached out to me. I've heard you. I've heard your prayers, and I'm here to answer your prayers. Now, take it one step further and have faith. And so Jesus continues. And at this time, if I can invite the band on up. And so what he does is he goes with Peter, with James, with John. And he goes with Jairus into the home where his dead daughter is now lying. And he's looking around and he says in verse 39, why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead. She's only asleep. And the crowd laughs at him. Could you imagine? Like, as if like Jesus just made a joke. You're like, ha, 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 that's hilarious. But he made them all leave, and he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 dying disciples into the room where the girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, Talitha ka'um, which means, little girl, get up. And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. And so let me be the person. Let me be that person for you today. Let me be the person that encourages you to take action. Because God delivered me from my addiction, and today I'm almost 2 years sober from alcohol. It'll be 2 years in September. And so God reached back. As I reached out to God, God reached back and he provided my wife. And he said to me, I will deliver you from this. And she's going to be there right by your side to get you through all the hard times. And so God has been with me since I invited him into my life. And so I would encourage you today to invite God into your life, which leads me to my last point, which is God is with you. God is with you today, tomorrow, and always. So whatever it is that you're dealing with, perhaps there's an addiction in your life or someone you love. Perhaps you're dealing with an illness, financial struggle. Perhaps you're going through some marital problems. If you're here today, if you're watching online, God has already planted that seed in your heart. But it takes time to grow. So once again, let me be that person for you today, like Jesus used that woman. Let me be the one to encourage you. Don't be afraid. Just have faith. Whatever it is that you're working through, God is with you and will help deliver you from it. God will walk steadfastly by your side with whatever it is that you're dealing with. God promises to be there with you through your struggles. But I also encourage you to reach out to God. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, how do I do that? How do I reach out to God? I have some answers for you. Number one is read the Bible. I would encourage you not to just read any Bible because it can be kind of confusing. Get a study Bible. Continue to read Mark. Join us in our journey as we're going through the book of Mark. And let us here at City Center be a part of your journey. Fill out a connect card, a next step card. Let us point you in the right direction to help you get the help you need. And remember, reach out to God. Don't be afraid, and just have faith. Thank you.